Out of it, I remember one time when I was living in Boston, my aunt and the Marshall girls, Mary and Florence and Trudy and another first cousin and Rhoda, we decided to go to New York City for New Year's Eve. And this was really funny. I drove into New York City and I parked the car at a parking garage, and we took a taxi, and none of us had ever stayed at a YM or a YWCA before. And we asked the taxi driver, can anybody stay at the YM, YWCA? And his response says, yes, and he had this, heavy Brooklyn accent. He said, anybody but dogs and Indians. So, and we, then my aunt said, well, there's a bunch of Indians going to be staying there tonight. And he was mortified, the taxi driver. He says, oh my God, he said, just what you would call a stereotypical response that he gave. He wasn't really a racist. And he apologized all over the place, and he said, tomorrow, he says, I'll pick you up and I'll take you on a tour of every place in New York City, Grant's Tomb, the Empire State Building, the Statue of Liberty, you name it, and it's all free. And he did. Wow. So in response. So he wasn't really a racist, but that was the society of the day, okay? And that's how his response was nothing. So it's really, and you go to places like Virginia Beach. My wife and I, we were there this spring for a week, and walking down the boulevard, Atlantic Avenue, and I looked in the store, and there's a T-shirt, and it says, "My Indian dame is crawling drunk," okay, on the front of it. So that kind, and that's what happened to the people of the Americas when the Europeans came here. They demonized the people, okay, and created, and this lasted right into the 1950s, 40s, 50s when I was young. You would go to a movie on a Saturday afternoon, and one week you would see the savage Indians slaughtering these poor, God-fearing settlers who were moving across the land and setting up their settlements, what have you. There was no mention of the fact that the settlers were stealing somebody else's property or anything. And the following week you would see a movie about Africa showing the black people, capturing some of these people on safaris and what have you, and occasionally cannibals having a lunch on a hunter and showing them in a pot, cooking them, and this kind of thing was, was part of the demonizing of a race of people. And the Mi'kmaq people were not a warlike people. The Mi'kmaq people were very, and most of the people in the Americas, for that fact, if they hadn't been friendly people, sociable people, then the Europeans would never overcome the civilizations of the Americas. Unfortunately, our people welcomed the Europeans in many instances and paid with their societies as a result. And at this point in time, history hasn't accepted that yet. But you got upstarts like myself that are coming along saying you have to accept it because that's the way life was. Okay, it wasn't the way the fairy tales of the past. It's time for them to go.